Our first presentation that we're going to hear now comes from Knowledge Management Assistance within the Publications Office of the European Union. So, knowing this topic very, very well, we're pleased to hear from Antico Garenser and Lucy Wallane, who will tell us about how to create, maintain, disseminate, and visualize multilingual reference data at a corporate level. So, I will hand over the floor to our experts. And remember, send in your questions.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry. So good afternoon, everyone. As you might know, the Publication Office creates, maintains, and disseminates multilingual reference data. In this presentation, we will tell you more about multilingual reference data and what are they, some facts and principles about them, what service is offered at the corporate level, and the results and benefits of using reference data. Multilingual reference data are published by the Publication Office on the EU Vocabularies website. On this website, they can be viewable and browsable online, and they can also be retrievable with only a few clicks. I will now leave my colleague Annika to explain you more about the reference data maintenance.
Thank you. So what is the general workflow for creating and updating reference data? First of all, we need to define the need together with the data managers, the data owners, and the users. And then it comes to modeling the data based on some semantic standards. It involves also the work of some professionals, semantic experts, and we need to identify the ontologies to be used and the semantic models such as SCOS, OWL, or others. And then it comes to the creation of the asset with some collaborative tools that we are going to show you later on, and with the support of the semantic experts. And once the asset is created, the new reference data set is published and disseminated in some semantic repositories and on other portals such as EU Vocabularies, as Lucy already explained. So it's a cycle of implementing, updating, harmonizing the reference data sets, and finally, of course, publishing and disseminating it to make it available to the public. The Corporate Reference Data Management Group of the European Commission involves data experts and stakeholders from across the European Commission. The goal is to define some rules and some principles for a common management of reference data, and to establish a list of key vocabularies that are covering some important topics such as list of countries or currencies or frequencies and so on, and that are offered for reuse in the European Commission and also made available to the great public. The background is that a lot of similar topics are maintained still in silos in a lot of institutions, while a lot of other reference data is already publicly available. So we need to harmonize and standardize them based on some common standards, basic rules, and some principles that you can see on the right side of the screen. The group defines also some corporate tools for the data maintenance and also some rules for the governance. So the principles involve, for example, persistent identifiers, assignment of metadata, reuse of external reference data, and assigning naming conventions as well. So in order to support the maintenance of common reference data, the Publications Office of the European Union and the Reference Data Management Team and Help Desk offers some services for the corporate reference data management. The first one is the creation and the update of reference data assets. Whether you would like to publish a completely new vocabulary or update an existing one, this falls under this service. Then it comes to the maintenance with some common corporate tools that we are also going to show you later on. And these are all collaborative tools. So multiple users can work with them together, and different expert groups can also collaborate. And once the reference data is created and maintained, it can be disseminated in repositories or on some common portals. Additionally, we also provide some training for the use of the corporate tools and customer service for any other request.
So we are using 3 web-based applications with different purposes. The first one is Workbench, which uses semantic technologies, and it is used to maintain large-scale multilingual vocabularies. The second one is EuroVoc, which is a cousin of Workbench. It is also based on semantic technologies, but it is used to visualize and share reference data and mappings. And it also gives access to data for non-specialists. And the last one is TLT, which is a bit different. It is not based on semantic technologies, but it is used to maintain and share numerous large multilingual lists, and it gives also access to data for non-specialists. If you are more interested into it, you can check the demo tomorrow and on day 3 of the conference. So what are the benefits of using those applications? First, the vocabularies are managed centrally and can be easily accessible. Various profiles can work together and specific roles and tasks can be allocated to them. This is a unique access point both to humans and computers, and it also provides APIs and web services. So, in a nutshell, reference datasets are maintained and created simultaneously with Workbench and TLT. They can be visualized and shared in real time with EuroVoc and TLT. As I said already, various profiles can work together, such as documentalists, translators, terminologies, but also IT specialists or developers. The datasets can be retrieved from Cellar for machines or from EU vocabularies for humans. So this allows skill pooling, online access, simultaneous editing, sharing in real time, shortened timeline, and it also increased the standardization. I will now give the floor back to Aniko.
So in the current situation, the cooperative mechanism for the common management of reference data involves vocabulary managers, users, and experts. And they are interacting for a common maintenance of reference data, for creating and updating reference data sets using some collaborative tools and based on semantic standards. So this results in an increased need for the corporate services and the use of the applications. We have more than 20 incoming service requests per month. So what are the next possible steps? The first one is adopting a common data model in order to further harmonize and standardize the data maintenance. And the next one is building a corporate database and publishing all the corporate reference data sets there in order to provide one single access point. So it would be much easier for the users and for the managers as well for accessing the data. So just to wrap it up, the well-established maintenance and dissemination mechanisms and the centralized professional services allow a more cost-efficient and faster dissemination and maintenance of reference data. And this whole workflow empowers the users and the vocabulary managers to take part in the editing process with the help of some collaborative tools, with standards, with common principles, and semantic applications. So thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, just please contact us, and we are open for the questions here.
Thank you very much. And of course, you're open for questions now, thankfully, as we have a live audience following us today. And a couple of questions come in for you, ladies. First one is, how many multilingual reference data sets are there available? I'm not sure which of you wants to take that question.
Well, we can speak of hundreds, I can say. Lucy, maybe you have a more exact number.
I don't have the precise number.
yes, but definitely hundreds of reference data sets. We have a lot of authority tables published. These are more than 200 around, we could say, thesauri, taxonomies, ontologies. So it's a really large number, and it's also increasing.
And thank you for that question. Hundreds is a plenty good answer, but if we can get a more precise one to whoever that asked that questions, they can always write into you on the emails provided. Another question, can I reuse some of the data sets in my project also when not working at the European Commission?
Go,
Yeah,
please.
Lucy. Yeah,
As
okay.
you prefer.
So, if you're not working for the European Commission, but you're working for a European institution, you can still have access to the tools, to the command management as well. And for the access, if you're not working for any of the institutions, we need to see the precise conditions, of course. But otherwise, for each project, we have the vocabulary managers and the data owners. So we always refer back to them if they allow the access for external users. So as in the maintenance tools, the data is still in editing mode, so it's still not published. We need to ask for permission, of course, from the data owners.
Thank you. I think that's a good, clear answer there. And then, don't you think that different data models could coexist according to specific community needs? A little bit more of a complicated question there for you. Lucy, do you want to take the lead on that one? Do you think different data models could coexist according to different specific community needs?
Yes, I think that depending on the needs, we can have different models, but if they are the same needs, it's preferable to use only one model. It's also ensure the interoperability, of course.
And I just, Antico, you're agreeing with that as well? I see you nodding along.
Of course, yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much, ladies. Lots more for our audience to discover online. So you've seen that slide there, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can follow it up and find out a lot more on the website. Thank you. We are going to move on now to our next presentation in this section, which again is using reference data and semantics from theory to practice. And we're next going to hear from taxonomy consultant Helen Lippel about taxonomy interoperability and how to make it work well, which is, of course, the important question. And I will remind the audience once again to use that QR code. Use the hashtag endorse2023 if you want to navigate to your Slido browser. You can just go to slido.com and put that in. There's no need to download anything. Helen, are you there? Can you hear me? And are you ready with your presentation?
Yes. Can
Wonderful.
you hear me and can you see some slides?
I can indeed. Excellent.
Fantastic. Thank you. No, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here and to hear from friends old and new. So this is a super quick run through of some of the basics of around mapping taxonomies and vocabularies, and this can be taxonomies that you manage or someone else in your organization manages, or it can be taxonomies that you're consuming from an external source, and I'll give some examples of these later. So I'm going to be covering some common use cases, again, not comprehensive, but these are the most common ones that I've come across in my career. And some of the technical aspects of actually doing the mapping and trying to work out, is this thing the same as this thing, and what you can do around that. And then finally, really the most critical thing, all the business aspects of it, because it's not just a nice technical job that you do as a one-off. It's something you need to make sustainable in order to be useful, and especially where you have very complex vocabularies. I know many of the organisations at this conference have those. So, tiny bit about me, not going to use up too much time on that. I'm a taxonomy consultant. I'm based in the UK, so glad you can have us still. Worked across the public sector, private sector, worked sort of international organisations as well. So I feel like I've seen a lot of different use cases and problems and opportunities in using controlled vocabularies. So moving on to use cases, probably one of the the ones I see a lot is around enterprise search, and by that I mean sort of searching internally, not Google, not external stuff. And that can be searching across multiple different repositories. And these days, there's so many different channels that we all have to get our information in order to do our jobs. We've got Slack maybe, or emails, or Teams, or Zoom, and intranet, and SharePoint. And there's an awful lot of stuff. And in most places, it's sometimes quite hard to find what you want. So where taxonomies come in helpful, they're very useful to have in search anyway. But if you're searching across those multiple repositories, you can benefit from the ability of a taxonomy to store synonyms, to control filters and facets on the user interface. You can use it to help control some of the relevance and boosting if you're trying to manage an enterprise search application to provide those kind of relevant, quick results to people. And increasingly, I'm seeing conversational search or chat GPT or AI is being discussed, and you can really benefit from having good interoperable vocabularies underlying those models. Otherwise, it's just a computer chatting rubbish to you. So the second one of these, which I guess probably a lot of people at this event will kind of it will resonate with, is around data sharing. And this can be between teams in an organization, or between multiple organizations, and even organizations across borders. In the public sector, this could be information sharing between agencies, like I'm doing some stuff around law enforcement, social security. It can be tax, it can be legislative information. The public sector in the UK, and I'm sure it's no different anywhere else, is not short of data. It's mad the amounts and volumes and complexity of data sets that get created, and so much of it is kind of wasted because it's not joined up where it could be. So in order to do data sharing, you're relying on consistency in naming and definitions between key concepts, identifiers, names of concepts, classes of things, and then joining the dots between those things that are referenced, in order to say that, yes, this thing is the same as this thing. So that's really important. And in most organisations, there is a problem with siloed information, where teams are doing their own thing, doing what they have to get the job done, and they're not making the most of data sets that their colleagues might have, and vice versa. Final kind of key use case that I'd really like to highlight is around data enrichment. So I've had a good example of this. I was working on a project where we were taking a structured feed of quite raw data from an external source that we were paying for, but we wanted to enrich it with our own tags because we had curated taxonomies and we'd done them according to user and business needs and had really good information. So we needed to kind of essentially glue it onto these raw data bits from coming in from the external source. So we had to do a lot of mapping of the different tag fields and metadata fields so that our stuff was added to the raw source, and that creates that kind of added value for customers. But we couldn't have done that without doing that linking. So that's the kind of some of the really common use cases. So how do you actually do it? And this is something that I often get asked when I'm brought in to do a project around taxonomy mapping. You need to think about, are the concepts exactly the same, or are they just not the same at all? Because we all know from language that words and meanings can be ambiguous. The same word can have many meanings, two words can have the same meaning. It gets really complex. And it gets even worse when you're then comparing different taxonomies, because did the developer of that taxonomy mean what you did for your taxonomy over here? So you really need to kind of think critically about it. It's very rarely just a case of string matching. A computer can do that, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's correct. And then, many of you will know if you're working in multiple languages, you've got that extra layer of complexity. because in many places concepts might be untranslatable or just very hard to translate back into the language you're working in. I work only in English because we're British, but when I've worked on these multilingual taxonomies, I always need to draw on a fluent or native speaker to help, because something that looks okay to me could be massively incorrect. And what you don't want to do is an incorrect mapping that then produces a kind of incorrect information for your end user, and that can cause embarrassment, or it could be damaging in some way. So you really need to think about that. And then just to touch on SCOS, so I love the SCOS standard for managing taxonomies, and that's got some really nice properties defined to help you indicate the level of relatedness between two concepts, so that it's not just a binary same thing. So you can say that something is an exact match, but you've also got a close match for something that's almost there but not quite. You can do broad and narrow, which is really good where you've got taxonomies that are operating at different levels. Like say you have an enterprise taxonomy at central level that's got lots of broad concepts, and you're trying to somehow represent mappings to more detailed taxonomies that say subject matter experts are working with, and then you've got the related match as well. So this increases your effort initially if you're doing this kind of project, but it's worth it in the long run to get a better quality and to get that kind of transparency over how close are these things really. So yeah, as I said at the beginning, the business considerations are super important. It's not just a one-off job. I bash people over the head about this all the time, not literally. And just like with any taxonomy, the ongoing governance and maintenance, it needs to be in place. It's not just, I will think about this later. So always have a plan if you're embarking on this kind of project. How are you going to keep this in sync? Because things will change. Meanings might change, language will change, the systems will change, the underlying business requirements will change, what you actually want to do with the mapping, and somehow someone needs to have accountability for that, and they need to talk to the right people, the data owners, the data stewards, subject matter experts, language experts if relevant. So make sure you have a plan for how all those people keep in touch and who owns those mappings, because you might have different owners for the taxonomies, but who owns those nice little connections between them, and having that kind of regular review cycle. So I am coming up to time. Here are some further resources about me and a thing called the Search Network that I'm involved in. There's also a book that I've edited called Taxonomies, which has a whole chapter going into a lot of really super detail about metadata and taxonomy mapping, far more than I've been able to do. But I hope that was useful as a super quick overview of some of the things you might need to think about.
Thank you very much, Helen. It absolutely was. We have a little bit of a time for questions. So first one is, how can you keep your vocabularies in sync while the represented information keeps growing at a bigger scale?
What I said about the governance process is if you have those regular review cycles built in, and your taxonomy should always be actively managed, because things just change all the time. I know, especially in kind of public sector and the European context, terminology is always changing. So it's about those people and processes. The technology will only do so much for you.
Well, just to build on that, I mean, do you have any advice for anyone who maybe is sort of reaching a point where we got off on the wrong foot, maybe went down the wrong technological road? How do you advise someone to maybe reassess mid-project, or it's like changing horses midstream, as we say in English? But
Yeah.
How can you do that without it being a real headache?
What you mean if someone's embarked on
Yeah.
a kind of mapping project and they've realised it doesn't quite fit? Yeah, I think go back to your initial scope. Is that still correct? Is the business objective that you set for was set for you or you set yourself, is that still valid? And if it is, then do more troubleshooting. What exactly has gone wrong? Have you built something that's too complex? Are you trying to map things and it's not actually adding any value for you? Are you getting what you need from subject matter experts? Are you not understanding some of the concepts? So I think really just critical thinking, keep drilling into it. That's best I can do without sort of specific example.
Yeah, no
But just
easy answers.
always be thinking. Yeah, never think, oh, I've done my taxonomy, I've got my mappings, job done. It's a living, breathing thing. It's like a house plant. You know, I'm not very good at keeping houseplants alive, but I try, and it's just an ongoing process. And sometimes they need more care and attention.
A couple of last questions. I'll take them together and you can answer them both or briefly because we've only got 3 or 4 minutes left. One anonymous member is asking, how important is the choice of certain formats, for example, SQS, RDF, over others, YAML, for example, for creating vocabularies, and which format would you recommend? And another question is, are you considering AI or automated processes for maintaining the mappings? So I'll let you choose which one you want to take first and which one you want to finish on.
Oh, that's a couple of great questions. I could do half an hour on both of those. All right. So on formats, I mean I like RDF. I like STOS for taxonomies, but the exact choice would depend on what systems you're working with. You know, if you are still working with Excel tables or Airtable or Google Sheets, then you might not need something really high powered. But RDF, I do quite like it as a very expressive way of representing pretty much anything. Yeah, that's a very complex question. Second one, AI. Yes, I do see massive potential in AI developing taxonomies that humans then review and reviewing mappings. But the kind of, I would always caution that it doesn't understand your data. It just looks at strings and stuff. It's not actually intelligent. It's just super high powered algorithms. Like I said, AI is no better than me trying to map a French taxonomy to a German taxonomy. I can have a decent go at it and have a little Google and look at dictionaries, but I'm probably going to get a lot of stuff wrong because I don't understand all the context. So AI, yes, definitely, it's the future, but also clever humans in the future working with the AI to really exploit it.
Well, thank you. I think what I like is that you're chiming in a little bit with what Rahel said at the end of our last session as well. It's not a panacea. Use it judiciously, use it with forethought. Thank you very much, Helen. Really nice to see you. We are now going to go to our third and final presentation in this particular grouped section. So I'm going to hear from Agata Machowska, AI and data expert, and Robert Machowski, analyst student at the University of Leeds, who are going to tell us about the business communication skills in international AI-based solutions. So thank you to our audience for your questions, because that's a nice segue, a nice link from hearing from Helen on AI to hearing now what others who are really focusing on it have to say. So ladies and gentlemen, the floor is over to you. Tell us a bit more about it. Agata, do we have you there? Yes. Oh, we have multiple versions of Agata and Robert there. Hello.
I need to unmute my microphone. Hello, everyone. My name is Agata Majchrowska. I'm actually very proud that you've invited us here. We've been doing some research with Robert, who is studying in England and is doing that particular thing from a very different perspective. He's studying applying economics instead of me. I'm not studying anymore. I'm a long life learner who is trying to be an expert within the elements of AI and data that involves in the actual meaning the implementation of algorithm and the solutions for understanding widely what we would like to use as our data set, our operating models, and the algorithms that are used to do so. If you may, I will I will share my screen. and start my clock to not to okay. I hope you can see my slides. Can anyone? Okay, thank you. We are going to discuss a very brief remarks on business communication skills research that is focused on international AI-based solutions. And we are going to present brief remarks on a holistic approach for modeling, designing, and encapsulating the above mentioned cross-cutting concerns from the perspective of the background. We usually speak about multilingual references, multiversion updates, communication skills, behavioral factor, organization attributes, and organization factors. And we are trying to build entirely holistic approach just to try to combine things to figure it out how to fit to the regular user's behavior, as we need to in a way guess what is going to be the best way of presenting the information, reuse the information, work and design the operative model that can be applicable on more than one specific environment. And then we need to figure it out how to transfer a model to a different environment if they really differ. What we've recognized within our research is that first of all, the expectations are to somehow translate the machine code into human behavior. It's not just about translating human behavior into a machine code, but we are expecting that something that maths can do will be as close as human behavior as one can reasonably expect. So talking about for and against methodology to implement standards as they are used in a business communication, we need to take the perspective very seriously, what we would like to achieve at the very end of the day. As for now, we've got when we are talking about the code, we've got algorithm, natural language processing, applied text analysis, in most cases, mostly applied mathematics, and we would like to add a human cognition, both situated and not situated, which is kind of a let's say not easy process. Still, it's applicable. As we are talking about the first stage, I mean the one that we have for today, we've got natural language processing, sentiments, emotions, and emotions mining, visual story communication, and the overall theory on signs and symbols that started in 18th centuries, and it was actually developed in 1974 as a totally different set of signs that we, for example, use in the, within the airports. What we usually understand when we are talking about natural language processing, and actually announced for, today the Microsoft updated version of ChatGPT, which is a version 4, that is going to adapt words into pictures, and somehow next week we'll see how our text is going to be presented into movies. Regularly, we use word simplification, structure mapping, applied text analysis, deep learning, and adaptive learning. When we are talking about sentiments and emotions mining, we've got emoji and emotions, mind control techniques, persuasion techniques, and the next step is visual gesture communication, which means nonverbal cues, gestures, signs, body language, and so on. As for now, what we've done perfectly is something totally new on the way of understanding languages. What we've seen in the airport, each and every one understands the signs on the airport just because we've acknowledged that this is the best way of standardize the communication that is understandable for each and every one. And for the purpose of referencing data that we need for today, perhaps it is the best way of trying to tag the set of informations or the information itself. I mean, mapping the groups that are understandable for each and every one. As the announcement that comes from Microsoft is from today, I'm not even sure what is going to happen next week, so I'm really curious about that. Perhaps we will have to extend the research again. Still, as for now, we've got, especially for English, that is the language of communication, in English across culture communication, across cultural studies, mapping cultural differences, and we are coming at the end to the intercultural competency and standards that includes human cognition, structure mapping, semiotics, and metaphor of structure mapping that is concerned, that is related to our humanity. As a next parallel elements that we have with concerns of our humanity, we've got rhetoric, reasoning, exploiting context, translation, and the metaphor. So the question of whether why can't we go deeper than we already are? Well, perhaps we will recognize the answer next week. I'm not even sure what Microsoft is going to offer. Just the simple information that the words that are pre-prepared by the generative AI are going to be translated into a movie. It's not even a picture. So usually, we had two different ways of operating. Translation was word for word or sense for sense, which was really adapted for the purpose of the diplomatic relationships and discussions and communication on that particular business related relationships. We've tried to categorize from the perspective of trying to recognize some kind of an order. We find the business communication rules, multimodal orchestration, and standardized procurement as the answer for saying that similar and basic elements of our life are pretty recognizable and can be translated into a deeper elements that are offered by the regular commercial software. Still, the particular element is a little bit more surprising than one would reasonably expect, because Microsoft is changing the offer day by day. So to summarize the research and the main aims and goals of the research and the research questions. First is the quotation that came from Albert Einstein, which is quite popular in all the presentations by the words or speech, written and spoken, do not appear to play any part at all in the mechanism of my thought process. The basic physics elements of thoughts are certain signs and more or less clear pictures which can be reproduced and combined to order. And the second quotation, it is important that we can understand the true physical behavior. So when we make approximations, we recognize consequences. So to summarize the entire briefly presented remarks that are, of course, will be presented in the paper that is going to be published after the conference, we would like to say that in the referencing of data, we should take into very serious consideration not word to word, even a phrase to phrase identification or mapping the set of informations or the information itself, but we should consider really deeply whether the headings of the groups should be represented by the pictures or simplified pictures, which are called signs. That is the question for the researchers, and that perhaps may open the discussion. Still, what I would like to inform that Cambridge University follows the research more deeply than we do, and more let's say academically than we do. We are trying to have some practical approach for the topic. Still, we are really curious of all the summaries and papers that are going to be presented later on science and graphical representation of information according to the order or to the process of ordering data. Thank you so much for your time for today.
Well, thank you very much, Agatha, for that presentation, and Robert as well. I know the paper is going to be coming out, and I'm sure we'll go into more depth. But we do have a question in from our audience asking, how can effective communication skills and organizational attributes play a role in this process? So I guess they're asking, how do we bring the two together?
Well, as one can apply the rules for getting good communication or high quality exchange of information between two individuals, we can try to, instead of learning them English and discussing whether one understands English or does not understand English, and perhaps does not understand the entire background of the phrases that one uses that are really popular, in fact, perhaps when we are going to present something that even kids understand, I mean the very simplified pictures, then we'll get a better level of communication that is required for exchanging the data between different environments and different cultural groups. That is the research question. I think that we will be able to show how the picture can be enough and worth 1,000 words to categorize the information and let people communicate better because of looking for the words, phrases, or information that fits better or is more suitable for the conversation or for the purpose of the cooperation than they thought when they are using English.
Well, thank you very much. Once again, where will the paper be available for people to go and have a look at it? How should they find it?
It is going to be published by the European Publishing Office.
Okay.
It's a post conference paper.
Okay.
I think it's going to be like 24th of March.
Okay. Good to know. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for whetting our appetite for that. And I will remind everyone that, of course, you can find all the additional information about lots of our speakers, about what they've been talking about, previous papers published, and, of course, future papers to come on that Office of the Publications website. You can go to europa.eu to find out more. And, of course, if you want to engage on social media, which we absolutely encourage, do use the hashtag endorse2023. We're going to go to another short break now, but again, don't go far because we'll be coming back with another series of 3 presentations. Those will again take the form of 10-minute presentations followed by your questions. So don't forget to have a pencil and pen ready or ready to type out your questions to our great speakers. We're in our final home stretch here of day 1, but we've another 2 great days coming up, and I will be telling you more about that at the very end. So don't go away. We'll see you back here at about 5:10.
You're bringing me back to life. I walk on the line that you wrote in the sand, with myself in your hands completely. You're bringing me back to life. You're bringing me back to life.
welcome back to the final session of today's Endorse 2023. Of course, we do have more for you tomorrow and Thursday, but we're finishing up here on track one, still talking about using reference data and semantics and looking at theory into practice. We have our final 3 presentations for you now. Each will be followed by a Q&A. So the same format as before. I know it's the end of the day, but these are interesting, so make sure you have questions ready for our great speakers. And we're going to kick off this last section with our Pizza Mighty, who is Director of Product Marketing at RWS, telling us about gearing up for success with multilingual voice search using structured content. So let's hand over. The floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's session. So very quickly, I would like to start because we are very short on time. What we are going to cover in today's session is what is the state of voice search today in the market? Can we consider voice as a valid content type? And how can we use voice for transforming guided experiences? And very quickly, we'll have a look at structured content as a foundation for all of these wonderful applications, an application in an industry, followed by a Q&A. So let's get started. So what about voice search? So voice is actually gaining a lot of traction. And this is, of course, based on some of the information in the articles and research, but also from talking to our own customers. And what we have found that it is a rapidly growing. Consumers are using voice to make purchases. Usually it is the first place where they go to make a search. And then depending upon the results they find, that's when they go ahead with visiting a website and finally making a purchase. Many times voice search hence is directly linked to the calls to the businesses. And this is becoming a norm. And what it means is that 20% of the voice searches do include the top 25 keywords for a particular kind of search. And what it means for the organization is that if they are not tapping into this increasingly new channel, they're losing out on insights, which could be used for guiding their customers. More about what do we mean by a guided experience and how can voice help? We'll have a look. But where else is being voice used in everyday life? So we have, of course, the in-car systems to initiate a phone call, to look up what radio stations you want to listen to. And in many cases, it can also be used for troubleshooting. Other than that, we are also looking at applications in healthcare. So like monitoring of your blood pressure, your steps, whatnot, and so on and so forth. And you can also find it being used as a language platform, learning a new language, translations, and so many more things. So this is a very quick example on a multilingual voice guided search. So what does it mean? So for example, this is from a mobile vendor. They have a very nice website where Madalena, our protagonist, she goes and she has a problem with her phone. And she starts talking to the voice agent, and she has multiple ways to go about it. She's considering maybe she gets a new phone. She's considering maybe she will wait for the next update to make available, or she decides should she repair it meanwhile, and what happens during all of this. So this guided agent tells her what should be the best opportunity for her with the least amount of pain for her. And for that, he looks up her name, he looks up her what kind of service level agreement she has, and then recommends her the nearest station for her where she can either drop off or she can get her phone to be picked up by one of the field specialists. Now, if you look at this journey, this is as if a human being was interacting with her. And to support this journey, there are, of course, CMS, CRM, to sales order, ERP, to knowledge base and business process management that are supporting this system and more. So this is a level deeper. You can look at it, there is an NLP engine because she could be speaking in any of the languages And then the knowledge base or the Q&A system, the bot might be built in English. So we are looking at machine translation, speech to text, and all of these wonderful services. But it doesn't just stop at that. The basic query can also involve different kind of meanings. So your product underlying content management system should be able to produce information in small chunks for the machine to pick up and assemble a response. And we are looking, and it could be a very critical piece of information. So this has to be governed. It has to be for sure a piece of information which is verified and validated. And similarly, this is all, as you can imagine, being powered by structured content. So structured content allows information to be created, reviewed as a single block. And all of this can be governed, and they can be used in various channels in various ways. It could be used by training and learning, by support, by claim management, and even by marketing. So, and what makes it meaningful and not something that doesn't match somebody's query is the layer of semantics that we add around such structured content. We can have an analyzer to provide how this content makes an impact. Was the customer happy? The tagging we do helps finding the right information for the right person. And there are other things available to make it much more intelligent, such as orchestration, routing the right information to the right person, having bot connectors, and more. So what does structured content really enable? So it can enable experiences on both the sides, be it B2C or be it B2B. So we are looking at hands-free, language-independent Q&A kind of experiences, which are at the end of the day built upon metadata, taxonomy, knowledge graphs, and the deliveries enabled via chatbots, virtual agents. So it's a lot of system and a lot of methodologies which are supported, but at the foundation, we are looking at structured content as the foundation upon which we can build such guided experiences. So what should one think of when they're considering something of this kind to build upon? So the first thing first is like, what kind of database are we looking at? What kind of API access does it have? Unstructured content with query APIs. Do you also want the digital agent to respond with just the link, or do you want to embed content into it? And last but not least of them all is to define a search area. How much of an area are we looking at? Is it just the product information? Is it the knowledge base articles? How much of reference to customer SLAs is needed, and so on and so forth? So defining an area is as much important as structuring the content itself. Now, this is a very quick look into voice search in a use case in the healthcare. For example, internally, people might be looking up as like, who is the best expert on a topic? It could be even help desk to help people locate and find the right information, or it could be a Q&A for procedures, rules, or what have you. Externally looking, we can turn it around, and it could be similarly for adverse events reporting, drug information, patient engagement, and social media interactions. So all of these can also be delivered not just via a chatbot, but also via voice as a medium. So this is a very quick look that voice can enable both internal as well as external Q&As and any language that it can be needed. So who benefits from structured content? This is a very quick look at who we serve, and across the industries, be it high-tech, manufacturing, medical devices, and more. And the reason for that is structured content really reduces risk, enables delivery of accurate, well-governed information, at the same time bringing down the cost of bringing an offering to the market. And that offering could be as simple as an information or much more complicated machinery. And the best part is you can deliver information in any language across the channels as needed. And I guess it's time for Q&A.
Thank you, Arpita. It is, although I think you've probably explained so much because we've only got one question in so far. So remember, if you do have a question for our speakers, do use that QR code and send it in to us. So, Arpita, I saw that you mentioned healthcare, you gave that example, but we have a question asking, could you give some more examples about how voice-guided search could be used in the public administration?
For sure, in public administration, you have the latest standards coming out or something, a rule or something in an area. For example, this is the new standard that is being introduced. This is the new rule that is being introduced. And people can come in and they can be looking. So basically, what is the latest update in the year 2023 in March? So this question can be divided into 3 groups. So we are looking at a timestamp, we are looking at the latest, which is the objective, and we are looking at what is the update. So first of all, the user can get a response that this is the base information that you're looking at. He can get a response and this is the expert you're looking at, you might be interested in, and these are the related publications. So a voice can provide you like how interested or how deep do you want to go into your query. So it is like any search really, just that instead of making it in a visual format, this time you have an opportunity to someone talking back to you, and that allows for opening up even the thought process of the individual asking the question that, oh, I had not thought about it, right? What is a related topic to my query? So voice makes it more human. It puts the human element without any human being present there.
Now, we have a lot of experts joining us this week. So what would you like them to think about when it comes to voice in terms of next steps? I'm guessing the idea of perhaps moving beyond mobile, which maybe is the first thing that people think of.
Voice is present at our homes. We are talking to the hey, please turn on my oven. Can you please search this song? When is the next train coming up in my area that I have to catch to go to California, Redwood Station, for example? So it could be so many things. And as the next step, if I am right, like what devices, of course, there is mobile, there are smart devices. You could also be talking to your own laptop because you do not feel like writing, but because it just allows you so many hands-free experiences. You could be talking while thinking, looking up in the air. Maybe you're one of those kind of thinkers who like to look away instead of staring at the screen. It just enables you to be more hands-free. It just enables you to tap into being more human in a way.
And finally then, do you think we've reached a turning point yet, or is there more still to come?
I believe there is more still to come. Talking to a couple of customers last week, we found that voice is still a very small number today, but that is increasingly growing, and it even surprises them how fast it is growing. So it might be upon us before we know, but the accuracy of the voice searches, the personalization, the recommendation, how the information is being presented, it can take a turn into a mixed media. Currently, we are looking at just the voice, but it could be a little bit more augmented in certain ways. So I believe we are at a tipping point, but this area is very interesting.
And watch out for virtual reality and augmented reality as well. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Arpita. That was fascinating. We are going to move on now to our next speaker for this final session. And we're going to hear about architecting an artificial intelligence ontology system. And to present that, we have Anne Clark, AI ontologist from Nearmap, who has also been assisted in this presentation by Zef Yap. But we're going to give the floor, Anne, to you, I think, to see your slides and hear your presentation and hopefully have some good questions and conversation at the end. So, Anne, are you there?
Am.
Yes, you are. Great. I can see you. I can see your slides ready to go. So the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, good morning from Sydney, Australia. I'm Anne Clark, and I'll be presenting on the work done with my colleague Zef Yap. So today I'll tell you a little bit about Nearmap. show some system requirements, highlight 3 feature solutions, and discuss key takeaways before taking your questions. Nearmap is an aerial imagery geospatial intelligence company that uses its own patented camera systems and processing software to capture wide-scale urban areas in the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Artificial intelligence at Nearmap was launched in 2020. Definitions are the foundation of AI decisions. We rely on expert labelers to manually tag classes like buildings, power poles, lawn grass, and more in our imagery. This becomes the labeled dataset used to train our powerful machine learning model that feeds into industry-specific data products. With the ontology, we want to be able to answer questions such as, is a solar hot water system different from a photovoltaic solar panel? Is that rust or dead leaves on a roof? To answer these questions and more meant to define and model relationships between objects in the livable world. When I joined Nearmap, definitions, logic rules, and labeling instructions were managed as text in a wiki. To share with other systems meant copying and pasting. My remit was to design an information management structure to enable leveraging text and relationship rules in a programmatically accessible way. Logic about physical objects should be separate from logic about AI layers. Ontology scope is not customer or product focused. Class-level versioning was essential to capture layer changes over time. Our system looks something like this. The ontology gets serialized to an OWL file, which we commit to a working Git branch. When we push the commit, a Circle CI job extracts any information we know will be commonly accessed and passes it to our backend API. When the job passes, definitions get published as a static site for consumption by team members and downstream apps. We currently use Neo4j to import RDF XML files without us having to parse them ourselves. Our backlog includes exploring additional visualization and analytics capabilities. Next, I'll highlight 3 key system design solutions: architecture, image storage, and versioning. Determining what to include as class annotations was one of my significant work efforts. I was able to leverage existing ontologies for core concepts such as a label, but ended up coming up with my own little schema, as you can see here, cobbled together from both existing and newly created schemas. The ontology is in Australian English and does not currently capture language variants for labels. Localization of classes and descriptions is managed by an in-house design team, including a technical writer. For example, our Gen 5 alpha class tire is spelled T-Y-R-E in the ontology, but customers in the US will see the spelling they're used to, which is T-I-R-E. To keep AI and object classes separate, I created separate ontology files. This enables real-world logic and relationships to be applied without the complication of AI concepts. Object and AI classes are related in an overarching AI systems ontology. Again, product-focused relationships or logic, such as what version of AI does this class belong to, are not part of the ontology. So next, I'll talk about image storage and association. Besides a definition and a label, each class has associated labeling instructions and between 10 to 150 example images. How to document and manage this metadata took a bit of trial and error. Ontologies are not databases. Therefore, labeling instructions and example images are stored in separate files and associated with the ontology class by URI. Which leads me to the third item, which was the tiered versioning solution. Versioning is the area I think we actually got the most requirements around, and we ended up segmenting versioning into 4 separate areas. Excuse me. The URI minted by Protégé identifies the class itself and is what I use in the system, as I said, to connect the class to labeling information and the example images. The integer ID is generated when a class is created in our labeling system, and is used by our expert labelers, downstream systems, and customer-facing content as a unique identifier for the class. Any dataset breaking change, the type of significant semantic change that would not allow us to continue using existing labeled data for training, is considered a new class. This requirement came directly from the labeling team. Significant, but not dataset breaking changes are captured by the variation at the class level. When implementing this structure, we weren't actually sure how useful variation would be, but a few weeks ago, I actually needed to use variation to update a developing class, and I was really glad that we had included such granularity in our system. We generate a properties version of class data to fulfill audit and traceability needs for downstream system teams. This excludes all example images or labeling instructions. We track image and label instruction changes with system timestamps. One early lesson learned was that not all pain points or challenges about language management can be solved by technology, such as quality control over all of your metadata fields completed, or how to define a new class. What you don't see in the system architecture solution is the proposal process I designed and implemented and used to develop Generation 6 AI classes. Secondly, about thinking in systems, to create a programmatically accessible system and make it a trusted source of truth required full AI team collaboration and designing with connectivity in mind. This is one reason we have 4 versioning tiers. Ontology system content integrates directly into our in-house labeling tool, ensuring our labelers have the latest information while working on a job. So this means no more copying or pasting. We have additional internal systems to integrate with and some logic-focused backlog items, which leads to my third point. I could have spent years testing and teasing out the nuance of each class and modeling relationships between them, but then we wouldn't have a working or usable ontology system right now. Instead, I limited ontology scope to a set of 16 reusable relationships. We got the system itself in place and in use, and plan to continue evaluating relationships based on team requirements. With that, I thank you and look forward to any questions.
Thank you very much, Anne. That was a lovely guided tour. I appreciate the slides. It was very easy to follow, especially at this point of the day when I know people have taken in a lot of information. So that is much appreciated by myself and I'm sure our audience as well. We do have questions, however, just for you, just to elaborate a bit more on some of the topics you raised. So one question is asking, could you explain what are the artificial intelligence specific relationships and rules and how they differ from objects and their relationships? Feel free to expand on that because I think that is something that a couple of people also picked up on that they want to know more about.
That's a great question. So for example, some AI relationships are, is the class line of sight or non-line of sight? And that's if imagine you're looking from the air down at a building or a tree. Can you see through the tree to what's on the ground? Or do you not see through the tree and the tree is literally your line of sight? Does it block anything below it? And that has some implications for how our model works and for how we label. But we thought that that kind of information and relationships would clutter what things are in the real world. So we decided to keep a separate ontology for those kinds of relationships.
And in which way do artificial intelligence specific relationships and rules allow machines to enhance the capabilities of the human mind? This is a topic that has come up a few times with previous speakers. It's obviously something we're going to talk about at Endorse conference every year. But where do we find that nice balance? How do we get the AI to work together with the human linguists and ontologists so that we get the best of both worlds?
That's actually where we're looking at a lot of things right now. What I started with the ontology was building out layers we had already created. So we have about 78 layers that are currently available to the public and about 150 total in the background. And as I said before, any logic, so subclass, superclass, or type of roof material or type of vegetation height, those kinds of items were only written as text. And so what I'm working with the data scientists now is to actually identify what of those logic statements can we use as rules that they can then use to help tweak their models a bit. The question I asked in the beginning was, can you tell rust on a roof versus dead or dried leaves? And so the one rule we have is that rust can only happen on a metal roof. So if the roof isn't metal, you already know that it's not rust. And so that's a simple rule about the physical properties of something that we can implement, and it can be used to help train the model to make it give better predictions.
And because again we've so many public policy experts and public administration experts here, can you give us some examples of where you might see this used in public administration, or how that might develop jobs in the future in that area?
A lot of our current customers use these things, especially during the pandemic when they couldn't go out to sites. So a lot of our customers are using it as a site evaluation tool. And so I see the competencies needed for identifying content through AI results versus actually going out to a physical site is a little bit of a shift in thinking. It can also be a good thing for safety, where if someone doesn't actually have to physically get on the roof, which is sometimes a very unsafe place to be, they can look at our imagery, kind of get a feeling of what does the roof look like, what's the quality, and make their evaluations virtually. And then if they do have to go to the site, they can then have some ideas of what they're looking at and be prepared for, how long of a ladder do I need? Do I need to tether myself? So they have some knowledge about the place they're going to that they wouldn't have beforehand. And so I think there will be more roles, like I said, that will need more of this data competency, along with that technological and industry know-how of when they look at a roof instantly saying, oh, that's ponding, or that's this kind of damage. So I think it's an addition of skills that will increase those roles.
And of course, it all needs to be mapped and work together interoperably as well. So thank you very much, Anne. Really interesting to hear from you. Great slides. And thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of Endorse. We are coming to the very end of our first day. We've just got one more presentation for you, but I will remind you once again of that hashtag Endorse 2023, because it doesn't end today. We continue tomorrow afternoon and Thursday afternoon as well. And we've got lots of different topics. I'll tell you a little bit more about those in a few moments after our final presentation. Now, our final presentation is going to look at localization and standard language codes. And we're going to hear, to tell us about that, Meg Morrissey, co-chair of the Language Metadata Table and Senior DAM Architect and Head of Professional Service for Media Valet. Meg, are you there? Can we hear you and can we see you? Are your slides ready to go?
Yes.
Wonderful,
Hi.
Meg. We can see multiple iterations of you on my screen, but I'm glad to see that you're there, because we are really rattling through these presentations today. It's kind of a rapid fire round, but as you're last to speak, you have a double-edged sword. People have lots of energy and lots of information from the day, but it's also the final one, so it's your job to keep people entertained and informed for the last 10 minutes of your presentation. I think we have your slides more or less ready to go now. Do we have the slides ready?
Yes, let me go ahead and get that set up for share.
Okay, Meg, I can see that it's starting to happen. I know we're using a lot of different tools here, so if you are able to share your content directly, that's great. And I will remind again our audience, I'm sure they're tired of me telling them, but to make sure they send their questions in time, because we get all these things set up and then at the end everyone asks the questions and our presenters have already finished. So Meg, handing over to you, Language Metadata Table and the Cloud Localization Blueprint. Please take it away.
Great. First, I just want to confirm you can see, oh, you know what, never mind. I can see your screen, so I know you can see mine. So Welcome, hi, to the language metadata table and the cloud localization blueprint. As noted, I'm Meg Morrissey, and today I am speaking in my capacity as a co-chair of the LMT. The LMT is sponsored by MESA, which is a global media and entertainment support association. MESA supports service providers, promotes thought leadership, and has created really a true culture of community for those involved in media and entertainment. The LMT committee members are from across studios, vendors, and other standards organizations. The data structure itself is supported within Synaptica. We leverage the most flexible standard, the Internet Engineering Task Force's Best Common Practice, number 47, or BCP 47 for short. The level of flexibility, however, creates room for conflicting codes where one looks accurate at first blush but doesn't hold up to research. The LMT is a standardized table of language codes that have been vetted by professionals and language experts who understand the structure and relationship between languages. That level of rigor informs codes that are not only compliant with the BCP 47 standard, but also best represent each language. The LMT fills a gap in metadata codes. There are over 40,000 possible language code combinations using the BCP 47 format, and only about 6,000 languages are spoken in the world. That opportunity for minute errors that lead to information breakdowns is pretty high. The LMT was created to provide a unified source of reference for language codes that can be used throughout media and entertainment industries. And I do also want to note that it is expanding beyond media and entertainment. So the LMT, here's a little bit about our scope. The LMT only provides codes for languages. We do notate script and writing systems when appropriate for ultimate clarity. We also provide researched and vetted endonyms and exonyms. So an endonym is the language name in that country's language. So what I would say is French is français. And an exonym is that language name as spoken in other countries. So French in English or Französisch in German. And as you can see, BCP 47 relies on a combination of standards to ensure that the full combination may be validated independently using these well-maintained codes. So because each of these standards has its own rigor and support system, we can be sure that the BCP 47 code is easy to validate by anyone who can look up these standards and consistent. Languages do change over time. We know languages are really a reflection of the political landscape of our world. And by leveraging these existing standards, we can ensure that our language codes are accurate for today. We do keep up with any changes made to any of these standards to ensure that our codes are current as well. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the cloud localization blueprint. The IBC Accelerator program is an innovation framework for media and for the media and entertainment ecosystem. So there are a few goals for the cloud localization blueprint. Formally design and document a comprehensive blueprint that's going to include best practices, key considerations for building that cloud-based media supply chain for localization and entertainment content. This is the direction where everything is going, is making sure that things are cloud-based and that across the entire supply chain, the codes and everything are going to move smoothly. So that means consistency. This will also improve visibility and tracking for those activities. It gets undertaken by a lot of stakeholders across this. So your content owners, the licensees, everyone who's making adjustments and using this content And because this is going to provide that visibility, it's going to mean faster time to market, and it's going to mean more consistent contractual transactions. So this is where the LMT comes in. We are the language code solution for the cloud localization blueprint. So this is a little bit of what the cloud localization blueprint looks like. So as you can see, there are a lot of moving parts, as there always are in the media supply chain. And we just noted in here where you'll see the LMT being leveraged. So there are a few places, any places where we're talking about language, any places where we're talking about other adjustments to content that are language based or include language in any way. We want to make sure that we've got that consistent code in there. So these are the metadata fields that are available from the LMT. Just a few things to note: we separate our visual and audio languages to accommodate for languages like Chinese, where there are 2 script options, simplified and traditional, but there are many more spoken dialects. And we use the term visual language instead of written to be inclusive of not only written languages, but also sign languages. Actually, I'm going to give you another minute on this one because there's a lot. And another little bit of a breakdown here. We do provide language grouping because that can provide structure and flexibility for localization. We provide that audio tag. We have multiple options for descriptions for that long description. And we do that because, and the same with the display name, because occasionally there are multiple options that are on equal footing, or there is an alternative, and we want to make sure that we are accommodating for that. We work with systems that are old and new, and we just want to make sure that we're keeping that flexible while also keeping the code consistent. We also provide the URL for each language value so that this can be leveraged in a way that is more automated. So here's a few examples of the LMT. These are some entries that kind of give you an idea of the breadth of what this covers. As you can see, we can be very generic with this. English, pretty straightforward. We also have Spanish, and you can see that this is Spanish is spoken in Latin America. So this is where we start to get more granular. We have this in English so that the practitioners who are in domestic areas can see this, and then we also have it in that display name, which is going to be the endonym. You can see the breakdown of this code. This example is ES-419. So that is ES, which is the ISO 639 code for Spanish, -419, which is the UN's code for Latin America. And we put in Serbo-Croatian as an option here so that you can see how we include both the Latin and Cyrillic as options for those display names for the tags. Chinese, that example I mentioned previously, where they have simplified script, and then Mandarin is spoken only. So that's just an audio language entry. Armenian had a really interesting option here because Western Armenian is spoken by the diaspora. So this one required a significant amount of research to make sure that we got this one in there correctly. We do also include sign languages. This example is American Sign Language, but we have many other options for that. We can be reached at lmt@mesaonline.org, and these are the links to information about that cloud localization blueprint. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much indeed for that, Meg. quite a detailed, as you say, some of those slides. And I have got one question that's come through asking whether there were any cases in which you had problems encoding the language using your system. I know you've mentioned specific languages there, the Armenian diaspora, but tell us a bit more about, in general, challenges you felt that you do overcome with specific cases, or any examples that you have.
Oh, absolutely. We've got lots of examples. Languages can be incredibly complex. I remember the first time I started handling language metadata and thought, oh, this is simple. English is English. I laugh at myself now because it's much more complex than that, because people are complex and the way that we organize our lives are complex. Something we recently went through was we had, something that we do subcommittees to do research for particular issues that we might have, and we loop in experts from all over. We recently went through a significant chunk of updates for languages for the Indian subcontinent, and we included experts from Al Jazeera. We had local experts from Cube, which is a media and entertainment company based in, I believe, in India. So we had experts from that area. We worked through all of those languages that were impacted by that, and were able to revise and revamp that section and really make that section of our language codes much more robust. We do that for a lot of them. One that we are still working through right now is hybrid languages, which is a very interesting use case. Hinglish and Spanglish are two that we're working on right now.
Well, let me ask you as well. I mean, many of the previous speakers have said things like, it's not a destination, it's a journey. I mean, how completist is it? I mean, what is the future of LMT? Or what are your views on whether that's true, that it is a constantly evolving situation?
Oh, language is a constantly evolving conversation. The way that we use language now is different from how it was 100 years ago. We have we have countries that didn't exist 100 years ago, and we have to make sure that our information reflects that current state. One of the challenges that we sometimes come across is that we also have legacy content that includes languages that either are only spoken by a handful of groups. And in that case, we have to be very careful in making sure that we are speaking with the right experts so that we get the most accurate information. And we are going to continue to do so. As I mentioned, we keep up to date with those standards that are the building blocks of BCP 47. And because of that, we are able to continue ensuring that the codes that we offer through the table are accurate. And we're going to keep doing that.
And finally, Meg, what's the takeaway? What do you want to say as your wrap-up thought to give to? You've got a lot of experts all joining us this week. They've more to hear tomorrow and Thursday, but you're the last speaker on the first day. If there's anything that you want to deliver as a takeaway, now's your chance.
I'd say that the takeaway is that localization is only expanding, and we are getting more and more hyperlocal as we have the opportunity and as we understand the importance of providing content that is relatable and that reflects and respects the reality of everyone. We are localizing in languages now in the last 10 years that we hadn't before. And we're going to continue to expand, and having consistent metadata codes for language is going to only grow in importance as localization continues to expand and as we're able to make it more nimble.
Well, thank you very much, Meg. Thank you for joining us. Apologies for the small technical hitches at the beginning, but it was great to get your presentation and your thoughts. So thank you very much. And indeed, thank you to all our speakers, not just for this section, but throughout the whole day. As you know, Endorse 2023 will continue tomorrow and on Thursday. But I would remind everyone who has tuned in today to use that QR code, use that Slido function, or go to slido.com and put in Endorse 2023 to give your feedback on the thoughts that you've heard so far. This isn't for publication or further use online, but it is to give the organisers some feedback, a sense of what you enjoyed, what you'd like to hear more of, and give a thumbs up as well to anything that's particularly stood out for you as what you want to hear more of in the future. Tomorrow we will start again at 1:15 Central European Time. Before we start, however, we will have an hour of demos streaming. You'll be able to hear about VocBench, TLT, Registry, Ref2Link, Expert AI, and then we will kick off with a keynote looking at data quality as a risk before wrapping up at the end of the day with a panel discussion looking at towards the creation of common European data spaces. Data spaces are a very hot topic at the moment in Brussels, and I'm sure across the EU as well. So thank you all very, very much for your attention today, and I hope to hear more from everyone tomorrow. We've got great speakers and we want to have you, the great audience, again as well. So thank you for that, and see you tomorrow.